The new Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has used his first Prime Minister's questions to criticise the government's response to the pandemic. The House of Commons has been reopened, but with limits on the number of MPs allowed into the chamber and many others taking part online. Sir Keir told Dominic Raab, who was deputising for the Prime Minister, that the government had failed to deliver the number of coronavirus tests needed and had not provided enough protective equipment for health workers. Our political editor Laura Kuenssberg has the story.
Time for the serious business of Prime Minister's questions. But not quite as you know it. Not Boris Johnson, but Dominic Raab leaving number 10. The usual hour, but not the usual look of the green benches.
Order! Order. I'd like to welcome everyone, both members joining us remotely from their constituencies up and down the UK and members here in the chamber.
And a new opposition leader in position for the very first time. With question after question on the government's handling of the coronavirus, kit for medics, the number of tests and the pace of the response.
And there's a pattern emerging here. We were slow into lockdown, slow on testing, slow on protective equipment, and now slow to take up these offers from British firms. The Prime Minister has said this is a national effort, and he's right about that. So in that spirit, can I ask the First Minister to commit to working with the opposition to identify and take up these offers from British manufacturers?
I don't accept his premise that we've been slow. We have been guided by the scientific advice, the Chief Scientific Advisor, the Chief Medical Officer, at every step along this way. If he thinks he knows better than they do, with the benefit of hindsight, then that's his decision. But that is not the way we've proceeded, and it's not the way we will in the future.
This is my setup here. I've got...
With MPs also keeping their distance, plenty of them, like plenty of us, we're working from home.
So we're just starting the session. I can hear the speaker speaking and the questions are about to start.
Balancing tablets on trainers for a decent shot, crossing their fingers, hoping the technology would work.
Looking forward to making history, very excited, and to be honest, probably a little bit nervous too.
It did. Mostly.
I hope the Secretary can make the most of that question. The line did go down.
A Welsh minister wasn't so lucky and is under pressure to quit, forgetting to press mute, letting rip at a colleague.
I tell you what, I know Jenny is ready.
I think Vaughan Gethin needs to turn his microphone off.
What's the matter with
Vaughan Gethin needs to turn his microphone off.
The government's taken some huge decisions on all our behalf during this crisis. And in the main, there is broad support for most of the dramatic measures. But on some vital specifics, the opposition's impatience is starting to show. Parliament had been away for a few weeks and its absence mattered. Now it's back and the political pressure will rise too. Not least on the man in charge of the health system. Hello, Matt Hancock, happy to pose for a pat outside number 10. Far too soon for any final verdict, but tough judgments day by day. Laura Kuenssberg, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, as we've heard, the government remains under intense pressure over the supply of personal protective equipment for health and care workers. An RAF plane carrying supplies of protective gear from Turkey arrived in the UK overnight, but ministers say there is still very much a global shortage. More than 8,000 businesses in the UK have responded to an appeal to manufacture products locally, but the government says that not all these offers can actually be taken up. Our health editor Hugh Pym has more details.
A consignment of personal protective equipment arrives on the Wirral, for use mainly by local care workers. It's organised by a partnership of emergency services and local councils, part of the rush to secure supplies at a time when there's been a massive increase in global demand because of the pandemic and reports of shortages. Some GP practices say they aren't getting adequate supplies through official channels.
We did run out of these completely in the last couple of days, so I had to go out and buy some of those.
GPs here feel especially vulnerable because they run a coronavirus assessment centre.
It's just quite terrifying because it's not just a risk to yourself, it's a risk to everyone around you. And I mean, we all know the bad effects that COVID can carry, so it's just scary. It's almost like you feel like you didn't really sign up for this.
Many hospital staff have to change their PPE several times a day, so supplies can run down quickly. One trust in Lincolnshire revealed just how much PPE they get through. At 3 main hospitals, they use almost 73,000 items each day, things like surgical masks, gloves and gowns. Based on the trust's size and the number of coronavirus patients it's dealing with, BBC analysis suggests the total daily usage at English hospitals would be in a range of 10 to 16 million items per day. The government says around 14 million units have been distributed daily in recent weeks in England.
NHS supply chain.
Since the virus threat became clear, the UK authorities have struggled to find enough supplies overseas, and experts say there's a lesson there.
We've relied on being able to buy all these things from low-cost countries, low-cost sourcing countries like China, on the assumption that they would always be available. So we've lost our domestic industry in many areas that are really important for government, for different parts of government.
Companies like this one in Yorkshire are keen to help. It started making more than 10,000 face shields each day. It's supplied some local hospitals, but has had no firm commitment yet from the government.
We'd really like to help the NHS first. Obviously, it's our country, isn't it? We need to all help. But with the amount of money that the company's spent so far, it might have to come that we will supply to the US.
Ministers say thousands of offers from companies are being assessed, and ensuring that the right equipment is provided is the priority. Huw Pym, BBC News.
Charities representing victims of domestic abuse say that they're concerned that people are unable to seek the help they need because they're having to spend the lockdown with violent or controlling partners. West Midlands Police have made 400 arrests for domestic abuse in the past fortnight, but officers fear that more crimes may be going unreported. Our correspondent Phil Mackie has been following a team of specialist officers who are trying to deal with this problem.
It's first thing in the morning in Birmingham, and a team dedicated to dealing with domestic abuse are following up a 999 call.
So he's wanted for 3 assaults on his partner and his 2 children. It's a very nasty assault, it's very high risk, and it's owed to the victim to get this person in custody.
The people in the house say they don't know where the man is and have warned the police not to come in.
Come to the door. He's telling us that he's got symptoms of coronavirus, so doesn't want us in the house. That's not going to stop us. We still need to go in. This could be a family member that's holding or looking after the guy that we want. No, we're coming in. No. We are running. If you go and stand by the fireplace for
me. The man they want to arrest is hiding in the bathroom.
Open it, else we'll kick it in. Stay where you are! Stay where you are! Stay there! Officer and taser! Sorry! Officer and taser! Oh no! She cut my shoes!
He's been arrested and is being taken away to be interviewed. Jamie was the victim of a violent and abusive partner and now helps others like her. Lockdown makes it even harder to get help.
So frightening. You can't get access. It's very difficult to get access to people. You're constantly monitored, under surveillance. Everything is being checked. And to try and find somewhere where you could make a call would be extremely difficult.
In Birmingham alone, they're making up to 30 arrests every day in connection with cases of domestic abuse.
Well, this man's alleged to have been in breach of a restraining order. His ex-partner has told the police that he's been sending her offensive messages and threatening pictures over the last couple of days. So it's another arrest for somebody who is involved potentially in domestic abuse.
If people can't access online support, they can dial 999. If it's not safe to speak, the advice is to key in the number 55 when prompted, and that should trigger a police alert. Phil Mackie, BBC News, Birmingham.